Hari Om. In today's nugget of wisdom, we will be taking a deep dive look into the very meaning of spirituality. There are so many different depths at which this topic can be addressed. We will take at least a few to discuss and understand. The thought of this comes from the quote of Pujya Gurudev, wherein he says, spirituality is neither the privilege of the poor nor the luxury of the rich. It is the choice of the wise one. Now, in this particular statement, when Pujya Gurudev says, it becomes abundantly clear that the path of adhyatma is not an exclusive path only meant for a certain few handful. There is definitely no age restriction. There is no gender restriction. There is no upper class, lower class, or any kind of classification for that matter. So when we look at this particular statement and how our minds behave from generations to generations, we often tell people that spirituality, going to temple, reading Bhagavad Gita, there is an age for this. There is a certain time for this. When you are old, when you are retired, as I know some of them would joke, that Vedanta is meant for Vedanta. When the front row is clean bowled, when you have lost all your teeth, to such one is the field of spirituality. When they have nothing else to do, nothing else to focus upon, then look into spirituality. Such a wrong notion. When you want to drive from point A to point B, do we want the clarity of the direction, the route to take, before you begin the journey or afterwards? Do you want to check the entire equipment and fine tune it before the journey or after the journey? Do you want the map and the route before the journey or after the journey? Certainly, we would want all of that before the journey and not after the journey. So I guess there is a huge gap, rather a misunderstanding of what adhyatma means. Because at the very end of our life, when one foot is hanging in the grave, that is when we look into this adhyatma with utmost sincerity, when your journey is coming to an end. It reminds me of the famous quotation of Bhagavad Pada, Adi Shankaracharya Ji, where he says, Nahi nahi rakshati dukrum karane. When bhaja govindam, govindam bhaja mudamate, samprapte sannihite kale, nahi nahi rakshati dukrum karane. It is not at that time that this is going to help. So what does adhyatma mean? At a very rudimentary level, at a very basic level, Adhyatma means first to understand what is the equipment that we have been blessed with, what is the goal that we have to reach, what is the path that I have to carve. Depending on where each one of us is, though the goal may be the same, the path that we pave is certainly different. And how fast, how convenient, how labor intensive, how I want to walk that path, it depends purely on this individual. So I have this equipment, I have the path to walk, and I have the goal to reach. To understand all these three things and to tune and direct. To give you an example, in today's new age transportation, flying is often the means, taking an airplane. I'm told, I have no complete idea of what happens in the cockpit, that the pilot, his or her main job is to take off and to land. And in between, if there is any turbulence, then to readjust, realign the entire flight. Now, what happens when they take a certain altitude, 30,000, 40,000 feet above the sea level? They say they put it in autopilot. What we call the cruise mode in the cars, they put it on autopilot. Before they put it on autopilot, they have to make sure that the angle in which the flight is set on the course does not even have a variable of 0.1% deflection. Supposing a flight is taking off at New York, it has to reach Delhi, and even if there is a 0.1% of variation, deflection in the angle, then instead of reaching Delhi, they might reach Russia, Moscow. And that would be the vast difference. So to fine tune that and to set it on the path. So I need to know very clearly what the goal is. For a human being, the Shastras say that nothing less than liberation of one's own self, in understanding one's own true nature, abiding in that one's own true nature, is the ultimate goal of a human life and its pursuit. Now, if that is the goal, which is a state of joy, happiness, fulfillment, contentment, nothing else in the world will give that. To understand that goal, to understand the path, that I have a tremendous amount of fine tuning that has to be done before I set the course. There is Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Pranayama, Yogasanas, all of this fine tuning and set the course. Now comes the very equipment. Now when I look at my own equipment, it is the body, mind and intellect. This body, mind and intellect interacts with the world outside, the Jagat, the world of people, things, beings, environments, situations, experiences. How does it approach the world and how does it take the input from the world, and how best this equipment can deal with it in utmost balance? If this is the understanding of spirituality, how can one go wrong in saying that it is meant for a certain privileged class, depending on their age, depending on their caste, creed, gender, whatever labels that we divide ourselves in? No, it is irrespective of that. And it is, in today's world, I need to mention this, that people unknowingly have attuned themselves to a foreign ideology, an Abrahamic ideology, wherein they say, I have been often asked, I have been often requested by many that Swamiji, you are in the path of spirituality, you are closer to God, please pray for us. When this kind of requests started coming too often when I was in the Western Hemisphere, it made me to think as to why this special request, where is it coming from? Then I realized that in the Abrahamic religions, one cannot directly access God or divine. There has to be a conduit, there has to be a via media to approach God. Therefore, there is a father or a brother or a bishop or a mullah that offers prayers for you because they have been sanctified to be the bridge between you, the individual, and he, the God. There has to be that, without which your prayers, your redemptions, your nothing can be sanctified. They are not sanctioned. Now, unknowingly, we have come into this trap wherein we think that, hey, if my prayers have to be offered, let it be through somebody who is in the path of... It is not a privilege. God is as close to you as to anyone. You just have to turn towards Him and offer. That essence, that tattva called Bhagavan is Yatkinchit Jagatyam Jagat, as it comes in Ishavasya Upanishad, that it is permeating, pervading through and through everything you can invoke. Therefore, in the Sanatana Dharmic way, in the Hindu way, you can invoke in a piece of wood, piece of stone, piece of plant, an animal or a being or your guru or whoever you want to invoke that divine in. That Bhagavan is available in that form to listen to you from the closest proximity. Therefore, we worship everything. Everything is worship worthy. Everything is divine by nature. If this is understood, then we would not have the audacity to stop anyone from following this path or put restrictions on. And the saddest part, put restrictions on one's own self as well. Oh, I don't know, I am papo, ham papa karmo, ham papatma, papa sambhava. Bhagavan therefore is standing like this saying, stop, enough, I know it. I am antaryami, I know what is happening in your heart. You don't need to declare that day in and day out. I understand where you are and where you are coming from. Now, will you move from there? That is the wise choice that one has to make. That is where spirituality begins. That is where a seekerhood begins. And it should begin before any path can be taken, any path can be ascertained. And this should be the priority of the parents, the elders, the well-wishers to introduce this to the next generation before they can start thinking of paving a path for their own life and lifestyle. We as a generation would have failed that we are setting the next generation into a direction or a directionless pursuit without giving them these tools. You have a certain equipment of body, mind, and intellect. It has to interact with the world of things, beings, environments, experiences. It has to follow a path which is the calling of the individual. Ultimately, that path has to lead to the highest, which is the purpose of life. Are we aligned in it? Now, what happens if all this is not aligned? The final pointer for today. We would be that much far away from a sense of joy, happiness, contentment, fulfillment. And what kind of a tasteless life when I have lived without finding that contentment, without finding that fulfillment, and the one who is not complete unto themselves, they being able to provide that for their family, their neighbors, their neighborhood, their community, their nation, the entire humanity. We neither are helpful to ourselves nor we are being helpful to one's own self. Now the question is, are we ready to redefine adhyatma, realign ourselves, refine ourselves, retune ourselves, and find that contentment and fulfillment for ourselves and through us to the world around us, providing that sanctity, that sanctuary of joy, happiness, and peace around? That is the question. Are we ready? Think through and let us try to attune ourselves. Hari Om. Until the next time.